Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into something today that I think is going to resonate with just about everyone.
Yeah, definitely. This one is pretty widely applicable.
So, you're here because you like to cut through the noise and get right to the good stuff, the stuff that matters. And today we're looking at how teaching practices can actually supercharge student motivation
Hmm.
and, create a classroom where everybody feels like they're on equal footing, where everybody can succeed.
Absolutely.
So we found this really fascinating review article in Educational Psychology Review
Yeah, this one is really interesting.
that kind of lays out a framework for thinking about all of this stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things that really stood out to us is the way that this article really laser focuses in on this idea of how students
Mm.
feel they're being perceived in school.
Right.
And, that's especially true for students from marginalized groups.
Yeah.
They really hone in on this idea that if you can tune into those feelings and address them head on, that's where you see the big gains in motivation and creating a more equitable learning environment.
Right. So that's really what we're going to be doing today. We're going to unpack, I guess, what they call the two main meta concerns that students from marginalized groups often, kind of struggle with,
Mm.
and then kind of look at what educators can do, what kind of messages they can send to try to alleviate these concerns.
Exactly.
So I guess our mission today is really to understand how we can help those students develop a strong and resilient sense of self. The researchers call it an expansive sense of self.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And that's really about seeing your value as extending far beyond your grades.
Absolutely. It's not just about the academics.
So, this whole framework that we're looking at is really based on a ton of existing research in educational psychology.
Yeah, it's pretty robust.
So it's not just like, somebody's opinion. This is
Right.
grounded in science.
Yeah. He's built on a solid foundation of research.
So, okay, I want to dive into this idea of a narrow versus expansive sense of self. Can you, paint a picture for our listeners of what that means?
Sure. So imagine a student whose entire sense of worth is tied to their last test score,
Okay.
right? If they ace it, they feel amazing, on top of the world.
Yeah.
If they fail, they feel like a complete failure.
Oh, I can relate to that.
And that's a narrow sense of self. It's where academic performance becomes the sole measure of your value.
Right. So it's like their whole identity is kind of shrinking down to that one grade.
Exactly.
And obviously, that's not a great place to be, especially when you consider all the different things that can impact how somebody does in school. There's so many factors.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to a student than just their grades.
So then what does an expansive sense of self look like? What's the alternative?
So with an expansive sense of self, students feel confident in their academic abilities, for sure, but it goes so much deeper than that. They also feel valued for who they are as individuals, their unique backgrounds, their values, the relationships they have. It's really about feeling a true sense of belonging in the classroom and knowing that your teachers see you as a whole person, not just a student with a certain GPA.
Right. I love that it's not just a number on a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we get students to make that shift, from the narrow to the expansive? This article talks about two main meta concerns. Can you walk us through those a little bit?
Absolutely. So the first meta concern that we see in the research is this fear of being perceived as having limited academic potential.
Okay.
And the thing that's really crucial to unpack here is why this is especially pronounced for students from marginalized backgrounds.
Right. Yeah.
And sadly, we have to acknowledge that historical and ongoing societal biases and negative stereotypes can lead to lower expectations for these students.
Right.
And this can happen even if the educators aren't consciously aware of it.
Right. So it's like this subtle, almost unspoken kind of assumption that maybe these students just aren't capable.
Exactly. It's like this underlying message of maybe they just can't handle it.
And that can be incredibly damaging, right? Those low expectations can really impact a student's opportunities, the feedback they get, and ultimately how they see their own abilities.
Absolutely. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So what's the second meta concern?
So the second one actually builds on that first one.
Yeah.
It's this worry about being narrowly defined by their academic success or, just as easily by their struggles.
Right, right.
And for students who are already facing a lot of systemic barriers and societal pressures, feeling like their whole worth in school hinges on their grades can create immense stress.
Yeah, it's like this huge weight on their shoulders. Like if they're not doing well academically, they feel like they're failing in every aspect of school life.
Exactly.
And even if they are succeeding academically, it's like they feel like other important parts of who they are, like their culture or their community involvement, their unique talents, it's like those things don't matter.
Yeah, and that's a real shame.
It's almost like they have to leave parts of themselves at the door in order to be considered academically successful.
Right, they have to compartmentalize their identities. And that's not healthy.
So, given these two, pretty significant worries, what steps can educators take? What are the messages that this framework suggests they should be sending?
So the article lays out two corresponding messages that educators can communicate to directly address those meta concerns.
Okay, I like it, a direct approach.
Yeah, and the first one is what they call inclusive expectations.
So what does that mean exactly?
So inclusive expectations really boils down to genuinely believing that every single student is capable of learning, growing, and improving academically.
Okay.
And that's regardless of where they're currently at.
Right, right.
It's rooted in what's called a growth mindset.
Okay.
That idea that intelligence and abilities aren't fixed, that they can be developed through effort, practice, and good learning strategies.
Okay, so it's moving away from that idea that some students are just, naturally gifted and others aren't.
Exactly.
It's more about emphasizing that everybody can learn and grow.
Everyone has the potential.
So how do teachers actually convey these inclusive expectations? Is it just about, saying encouraging things?
Encouragement's part of it,
Yeah.
but it really needs to be woven into your actual teaching practices.
Okay.
So think about providing opportunities for students to revise their work, to learn from their mistakes, offering different kinds of support to meet individual needs, and really framing challenges not as failures, but as opportunities for growth.
So it's really about the approach. It's not just about what you say. It's about how you set up the whole learning environment.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where students feel supported in their learning journey.
I like that. So what's the second key message?
So the second one is broad regard. And this is about communicating to students that they are seen, valued, and respected as whole people, with a full range of values, identities, and relationships that are acknowledged and appreciated.
So inclusive expectations is kind of focused on, the student as a learner, and broad regard is more about the student as a whole person.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do educators communicate this broad regard thing?
It can take a lot of different forms. It could be intentionally incorporating diverse perspectives into the curriculum.
Right, so it's kind of baked into the material.
Exactly.
Right.
Or creating safe spaces for students to share their backgrounds and interests, showing genuine curiosity about their lives outside of school. It's really about fostering a classroom where students feel truly seen and valued for who they are, not just for their grades.
I love that. It's really about building that personal connection with each student.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got these two messages, inclusive expectations and broad regard. How do they actually address those meta concerns that we were talking about earlier?
So when you communicate inclusive expectations consistently, it directly counters that first meta concern.
The fear of being seen as limited. Right.
Yeah, exactly. When teachers continuously convey their belief in a student's ability to learn and grow, it challenges those negative stereotypes, whether they're internalized or present in the environment.
So it's almost like you're actively pushing back against those harmful messages that students might be getting.
Yeah, you're replacing them with a more empowering message.
I like it. Okay, so then how does broad regard address the second concern, the worry about being defined solely by academic performance?
So, by showing broad regard, educators send a powerful message that a student's worth isn't determined by their grades alone.
Okay.
When their identities, their values, their relationships are all acknowledged and respected, it takes some of that pressure off.
Right, it's not all riding on their grades.
Exactly.
Right.
It reinforces that they're valued members of the community for their whole self.
To the whole package.
Exactly.
Okay, so this all sounds, incredibly practical. And I know that the abstract even mentioned that even new teachers can start using this framework.
Oh, absolutely. It's designed to be accessible.
So what are some concrete ways that educators can actually weave these ideas into their classrooms?
Even without a lot of experience, teachers can start by just reflecting on the messages they're sending, both implicitly and explicitly.
Okay.
They can think about how they respond to student struggles, the opportunities they give students to share their perspectives, and how much they value the different backgrounds and experiences in their classroom.
Right, so it's really about becoming more mindful and intentional in in how you approach everything.
Exactly.
So it's not just about making the classroom, a nicer place to be, although I'm sure that's a nice byproduct. The abstract also highlights how this framework can make classrooms both more motivating and more equitable.
Right. And those two things go hand in hand.
So how do these messages, contribute to that?
So when you nurture this expansive sense of self, students feel academically capable and personally valued, and that makes them way more likely to be engaged and motivated in their learning. When students feel like their teachers believe in them and see their potential, they're more willing to put in effort, to take risks, and to push through challenges.
It makes sense. If you know that people believe in you, you're going to try harder.
Exactly. And that increased motivation is a huge factor in creating more equitable outcomes because it helps to counteract those negative societal biases that can hold students back.
Okay. So this framework is really interesting because it seems to connect with a lot of broader ideas in the field.
Yeah, it's very much in line with current research.
And the abstract mentioned that it builds on existing theories of academic motivation and the social side of education. So without getting too academic, what's the key takeaway for our listeners about that connection?
The main takeaway is that this isn't some brand new, untested idea.
Okay, it's not a fad.
No, not at all. It's based on a solid understanding of how motivation works, how our social identities impact our learning, and how important it is to feel a sense of belonging and have positive relationships in school.
Okay, so it's really bringing together a lot of well-established research and putting it into a format that teachers can actually use.
Precisely.
So to wrap things up, let's recap what we've covered. We talked about the limitations of that narrow sense of self and the benefits of fostering an expansive sense of self.
Yeah, a much more holistic view.
And we identified those two key meta-concerns that often impact students from marginalized groups.
The fear of being seen as limited and the pressure to be defined by their grades.
Exactly. And finally, we discussed those two important messages that educators can communicate: inclusive expectations and broad regard.
And by understanding these dynamics and putting these messages into practice, educators can make a real difference in their students' lives.
Absolutely. It's not just about academic achievement, it's about helping students develop a strong sense of self-worth and a sense of belonging in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up.
So this has been a really great deep dive. It really highlights how small changes in how teachers interact with their students can have a huge impact, especially for those from marginalized groups.
It's about shifting our mindset and our approach.
So here's a final thought for you as we wrap things up. This framework focused on education, but think about how these principles of recognizing potential and valuing the whole person might apply to other parts of your life.
That's an interesting question to consider.
Yeah, how might you adopt these ideas in your workplace, your community, your personal relationships? How could consciously using these ideas shape how you see and interact with others, especially those from marginalized communities?
It's about broadening our perspective.
Exactly. What would happen if we all started seeing people not just for their current performance or one aspect of their identity, but for their potential to grow and for the richness and complexity of their humanity?
That's a powerful idea.
I think it's something worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.